Well, what more can be said about Rafael dos Anjos? When he became the UFC lightweight champion back in March, it kind of felt like the MMA community was reluctant to embrace him. He comes back in his first title defense here in Orlando, Florida, December 19th, in front of a live network television audience, and he completely annihilates Donald Cerrone like we've never really seen before. It took him a little more than a minute. He wins via TKO. Rafael dos Anjos is now the reigning and defending UFC lightweight champion. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani. This is our UFC on Fox 17 post-fight wrap-up show. That is the birthday boy, the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall. He was in attendance on press row. Chuck, we talked about this fight 24 hours ago. Honestly, a lot of people were picking RDA. Let's not get crazy, but I don't know if anyone thought it would go down like that. How shocked are you?
I was pretty shocked. I mean, what happened to the guy who lost to Clay Guida back not so long? It's kind of crazy how this guy, there was, let's face it, there were some doubts with him. Going back to UFC 185, there was a lot of people whispering about this and that, his body changing and whether it was or not and all this thing. I just thought that he had to kind of come out here and show something, to prove something to people. And I thought he really did. I mean, it blew my expectations by being able to score such a quick, what was like 1:06 or something like that, a TKO. I didn't foresee it going like that. I thought Cowboy Cerrone was just so honed in for this fight that he was going to get. I thought he was going to get some offense going before we ever saw it. RDA take the fight away from him. So I was surprised at how fast it went down. But then there was this other part of me. It's like, Cowboy has this propensity to kind of get hit early, and unfortunately, he just couldn't recover. He was like blitzed from that moment on when he took that knee to the body. I think it was. He was reeling, and it was like he could not get out of the way at that point. I thought that they tried to give him a little bit of time to recover, but at some point when you're not fighting back, yeah. I mean, it's just the right call.
What do you think of the stoppage? You liked it?
I mean, ultimately I did. What was crazy, though, is I saw Cowboy Cerrone pretty much immediately, right, when he just stands up casually, like it already had dawned on him. Even as it's happening, it's dawning on him like, I blew it. I didn't show up. I didn't get this thing done. So I don't think he had his wits scrambled too bad, but he just wasn't able to answer. I mean, I don't think he even knew where the punches were coming from at that point because he was just kind of turtling up. I just didn't see it going down that way. I didn't think it would end that fast. I didn't think Donald Cerrone would get worked quite like that. He's winning all these fights in a row, looking very good, kind of leading up. So I was okay with the stoppage, but I guess I was just more surprised than anything.
And it's amazing, just like that, Donald Cerrone enters that Joseph Benavidez / Uriah Faber / Chad Mendes territory where he has now lost twice to the current champion. All of a sudden, this guy who had won 8 in a row, he's always an exciting fighter to watch. He's a fan favorite, but it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Very interesting because, I mean, like we were talking about in the preview show, this was sort of his second time having like a big winning streak where you kind of, how much mental and physical wear does that take to keep building yourself back up and into a position to get it? Even though he downplayed the belt and all that, obviously meant a lot to him to get to this chance. He seemed very, accepting of what happened. He wasn't making excuses, but I think it's going to be difficult unless for some reason RDA loses his next fight to whoever he faces, and Cerrone, obviously his resume still speaks for itself. I think he could still get back in the conversation. But as long as RDA is there, I don't know. It's going to be pretty discouraging for him while that's happening.
Yeah, much respect to Donald. You know how much this meant to him, especially with everything going on with his grandmother. And he's been working for this moment for so long. He did all his interviews, showed up to the press conference, and really made no excuses. So you have to tip your cap to him. So now here we are, and we talked about this earlier. It's almost like the Conor McGregor lottery ticket is bigger than any belt. You had, and we'll get to these guys in a second, but you had Charles Oliveira call out Conor, you had Nate Diaz call out Conor, and of course, he didn't call him out. RDA is a little too, I think, humble and proud to do that, but he did say, hey, if you want to fight me, I'm ready, but it'll probably be a mistake if you come up to 155. What do you think happens? Do you think that they do Conor McGregor versus RDA?
I was always of the belief, and I almost believe it more now, I think, that if RDA won, if I'm Conor McGregor, I'm staying at 145 for a variety of reasons, but I'd stay and fight Frankie because the fight is already there. It's already a big fight. I think a lot of people want to see it. He hasn't really truly defended the belt yet. They just married up the belt, so that would be his opportunity to do. I know the weight cut sucks for him, but at the same time, that would be the fight. And it's not that I don't think he could beat RDA. It's like obviously that's a big challenge, but I just don't think it's the sexy fight he wants right now either. If it was Donald Cerrone, it'd sort of be like, well, they've already had this sort of backstory where they were going at it, the go big thing and all that. So, Cerrone would be chirping at him and all. He's just not going to get that with RDA. He just fought Jose Aldo, who's very mild-mannered. He had to kind of bring out that, that side of Aldo a little bit. So if I'm him, I fight Frankie Edgar next, and I would wait a little bit for that 155 jump, but we'll see.
I will respectfully disagree, and what I mean by that is I think that if he fights Frankie, and that's what I want to see as well, he really cements his place as one of the best ever 145ers with only one title defense. I'd like to see that, especially if New York gets done at MSG. New Jersey guy against an Irish guy would be gigantic.
Wow.
However, I think the sexy part of the whole equation for Conor McGregor is just being a two-weight champion. That's what he wants. He said he came in as such. He wants it. So I don't even think it matters who's the opponent there. And you saw John Kavanagh, his coach, tweet a picture of Mr. Burns and say, excellent. So clearly he's not too upset about the whole situation.
Yeah, I saw that too. I mean, you got to love those guys. I feel like they're sort of open for it all. But then again, they're smart. They're smart guys too. I think they could be. Who knows? Who knows really what they want? I definitely don't think Conor McGregor would duck the matchup if it came down to it, and the UFC was cool with him winning 2 belts, and they wanted to do that fight. I'm sure they would jump at that opportunity. You know what I mean? But that's a tough fight for him. I mean, that's I believe in RDA now. I'm just sort of seeing that. I did before too, but it's like you wanted to see it again. He hadn't fought in a long time. I just felt like he made a pretty good statement. So that's a tough fight for him if he takes it.
Well, Conor said last week, numbers and options. That's what the fight game is all about. He certainly has both of that right now. It's going to be really interesting to see. Also, they're looking for a main event for that show March 5th in Rio de Janeiro. They have a Brazilian champion who seems healthy. It's going to be interesting also if they try to plug RDA back in that slot. Let's talk about the co-main event. Alistair Overeem versus Junior Dos Santos, a fight that has been 3.5 years in the making. And I think safe to say, despite the sort of spectacular finish, didn't quite live up to our expectations, right?
I agree with you. And I think, I mean, obviously they had the first round was slow. They were feeling each other out. You can understand that because one punch ends either night, So I could sort of understand that. But, man, Junior Dos Santos, I just feel like the fight happened too late in the end because Junior Dos Santos just didn't look like himself out there. Just a lot of variety of reasons, but just slower and just
taking a lot of damage.
He might be more hesitant too. I don't know, all those things. I thought you could see it all though. I thought you could just see him slowing down right before your eyes, and he just didn't look good. So good for Alistair Overeem. You don't want to take anything from him because the guy has now turned it around. He's wanted this fight for a long time, and here he got it, and he won the fight, and he did it in a way that was, it was memorable enough, I think, and now he's won 3 in a row, and he's got a contract coming up. So it's like I think he put himself in a great position, possibly, he probably negotiated a title shot into this. Who knows? But you can't take it away from him. But I will say that I thought the thing that stood out to me the most was just how bad Junior Dos Santos looked.
Were you okay with the stoppage?
Yeah, I was. Again, to me, he looked like he was out when he went down. I always feel like that's that brief moment when you got to sort of make the decision, like say, is it done? I just thought he was done, So I didn't have any problem with it. It could also be a little bit too that you're thinking like he takes so much damage in his previous fights. I think you can't divorce that side of it where you're thinking don't get your head knocked in this fight, like that sort of thing. But I didn't have any problem with it.
And I think of all the big-name free agents right now, Overeem's probably the most interesting one. He has a very loyal and strong fan base. He's a heavyweight, and those sell. And, Scott Coker is a big fan of Alistair Overeem. He's a guy who obviously had him under his umbrella with Strikeforce. That he's going to try to put down a lot of money. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that whole thing plays out. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so let's quickly talk about Nate Diaz. Comes back, huge underdog, and it was vintage Diaz. Talked some smack, baited Michael Johnson into fighting his fight, and won a very impressive. It was, like I said, vintage. It was his best performance, obviously, since the Gray Maynard fight. Completely different guy than the one we saw last December against RDA. And he calls out Conor McGregor as well. It would be fun. I wonder if he's in that discussion. But were you as impressed with his performance as well?
I really was. As the fight sort of started, I was like, well, I don't know what you're going to get. And I felt like it took him a little bit to sort of find assignment, but that's understandable because he's had a long layoff. He looked like he was kind of finding his legs and his timing a little bit, but there was one part where he just sort of made a backward movement, and Michael Johnson just completely missed, and he kind of tagged him with a shot, and then you saw him start that swagger, and I thought, that's how it started. I saw at the end of that round, the end of the first round, I thought that he just started freelancing at that moment. Like, here we go. He just sort of clicked in again. And from that point on, I thought it was great. The crowd was just getting behind it all. Even Michael Johnson's return shots, which were big sometimes, he caught him a couple times right on the chin. And Diaz is just like, whatever, and just pointing him down and mocking. I don't know, man. To me, that's a lot of fun. And it's, even more fun in a lot of ways to contemplate a Diaz-McGregor fight, because you think about the way those guys talk and where they come from, it would blow your mind just in the hype kind of building up to that fight.
And, I mean, there are other options, of course. At 155, Tony Ferguson would be a fun one. But, yes, Diaz, I mean, let's be honest. McGregor versus anyone at this point, we can make a case for that. It's a lot of fun.
Even Charles Oliveira?
Yes, even Charles Oliveira, even though he doesn't make weight almost ever. But, we saw, we saw this week, great spirits, great shape, and he stepped up. And I think we were wondering, had the division passed him by? Clearly, he just beat the number 6 guy, I believe, Johnson. Clearly, it hasn't. And the sport is a little more fun when the Diaz brothers are around. And how about that post-fight interview? Who cares about national TV? The whole thing gets bleeped out. But I think people like him actually more, right?
Vintage Diaz. I mean, when he got up there, I was like, this is not going to be good, because you could see he was worked up. Yeah. I'm like, this is, it's on Fox, and you're just like, he's going to just not check himself. So sure enough, he did that. Okay, let's end it the way we ended it for the preview show. Some other big performances on the card. Karolina Kowalkiewicz with a big win in her debut. Valentina Shevchenko with a win as well. Yes, how about that? There was speaking of vintage, a vintage knockout by Nate Marquardt. Who saw that coming against CB nice. Dalloway? Some really nice performances. Is there any other one? Am I forgetting someone? Is there anyone else that comes to mind? I thought Nick Lynn. I don't know if you got the Nick Lynn's fight. It was really a thing of beauty.
Setting you up for that.
I know. Actually, that was sort of that fight was a little. They ran out of gas about midway through, and it got a little sludgy there. But
it was the work fun. On the mic was fun afterwards.
Yeah.
Take Lens.
I have to say he underwhelms me to the point that I keep pulling this ruse. So but he got the win, so good for him.
All right, that does it for us. We got to go home. It's been a fun couple of weeks with you. Las Vegas, Orlando.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, was it? So I think there was 48 fights in the last 9 days that we've been for. That's kind of crazy. At the very end, I was counting them up. I'm like, it's just sort of nuts at that point. 48 fights. Crazy.
Now I'm sick of you, officially. Yes. I don't want to see you for at least 2 weeks.
Maybe next year we can do it.
Yes, next year. January 2nd. What an offseason we get. 2 weeks off. UFC is back. UFC 195, January 2nd. That is the card headlined by Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler. We'll be there. So we get a nice break here for the holidays. But in all seriousness, thank you to all of you. What a year it has been for all of us at MMAfighting.com. It started on January 3rd for UFC 182. John Jones versus Daniel Cormier won. First fight of the year, Alexis Dufresne versus Marion Renault. Last fight of the year, Rafael dos Santos retaining his title against Donald Cerrone. You have been great to us. Thank you for stopping by each and every day, watching, reading our stuff. It has been a lot of fun covering the sport, and we look forward to doing it all over again and even better in 2016. Happy holidays. Enjoy the holidays. Have safe, healthy, happy holidays, all that good stuff. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Kwanzaa, everything and more. We'll see you in January for UFC 195. Take care. Good night. Goodbye.
Sayonara.